Tom's Weight Loss Journey Part 3. When last we left off, I had gone over the kind of decline of nutrition and water intake and the incident, as we're calling it, where I fell getting out of bed and couldn't get myself back up due to weakness. At that point, again, we called the Alton Fire Department and took the big ride over to Huggins Hospital in Wolfboro by ambulance. 53 years old, first time I've ever been in an ambulance. Unfortunately, as this story unfolds, I will have plenty more ambulance rides under my belt. Got to the hospital, it was on a Thursday. Got to the hospital, went to the ER, obviously. They did some checking and testing right away. And the biggest thing they came back with that they could attribute to the lack of strength and everything is dangerously low potassium levels, was their quote. From what I've been able to gather in talking with them on this, essentially potassium is a big supporter of muscle strength and muscle health. Again, it goes back to what I said in the last part about I had been hammering so much water down, but not getting nutrients in, that I had essentially flushed everything that we need for that type of situation out of my body. They seemed very concerned about it, and I'm like, it's potassium, whatever. We'll, eat a couple of bananas or whatever the hell it is. Well, then they quickly pointed out, yeah, by the way, there, smart guy, your heart is also a muscle and can be drastically affected by this. So, things were already pretty darn serious, but they got more serious quickly when they started bringing stuff like that up. After a little while, they decided they were definitely going to admit me to the hospital. So I got moved to a room. And from there, we began working on getting the nutrients needed back in and trying to work on some physical therapy to get me up and around again. When they first started hooking up the IV bags of potassium, they warned me. They said, these kind of hurt. And I didn't really understand. I'm like, you mean the needle's bigger or something? I said, no, we go into the IV line we've already got in, but it hurts when it flows in. Big understatement. Very big understatement. There were 2 or 3 times that I was literally flopping like a fish on the dock because it burned so bad going into my arm. Couple of times they would come in and actually turn the IV off for 15, 20 minutes at a time to give me a break and let me catch my breath. I was doing anywhere from 4 to 5 of these IV bags a day, so it was very uncomfortable. At one point, we did determine that putting a hot pack on the IV area in my arm was a little bit helpful. It took some of the edge off. Then, unfortunately, they ran out of the hot pack we were using. Tried something kind of, I don't want to say homemade because it sounds bad, but basically homemade, that worked, but when it got done, it left a rash. And they quickly jumped to the conclusion that, oh no, we can't do any more hot packs because you had a reaction to them. And I'm like, no, I've had, 10 of the regular ones and was fine. This homemade one was the problem, and they really wouldn't hear it. So unfortunately, I kind of had to just suffer through the rest of the IVs while I was there. Fortunately, by then, they were getting fewer and fewer. I believe they had said minimum acceptable on potassium is like a 3.5, and I think I was like a 2.6 when I got there. So not good. The doctors there were conferring with the surgeon who had done the surgery, and at some point they decided they needed to do a barium swallow just to make sure everything from surgery was going okay. Well, at Huggins, I did not have a powered lift to get me up and down out of bed. We had a thing called I forget, it was like a Luminox or something like that. it was kind of like the powered stand lift, but without the power. Um, had a couple of bars that went across it, so they'd get me with my feet off the bed and roll it under me, and I'd kind of grab onto the crossbars and pull with all I had in my arms because I had nothing in my legs. And they would use a one of the gate belts that they put around your chest, and 1, 2, 3, and hoist me up. So at some point we get in that, and they uh, put me in a chair and roll me down to X-ray for the barium swallow test. Well, as soon as we got there, I knew right away it was not going to go well because you have to sit in a special chair for this that goes with the X-ray machine, basically. And the special chair is incredibly narrow. My butt was going to be hanging off it on both sides by a ton. Uh, no armrests of any kind, no nothing of any kind, just literally an L-shaped cushion. Um, so they got me out of the chair I was in, standing on the machine again, and backed me up to the chair for the X-ray. And the legs of the stand lift did not mesh with the feet on the machine. So basically, I ended up way too far away. I couldn't get to where, like, while standing comfortably, my butt was touching the seat. On top of that, the foolish seat was like a good 8 inches higher than my butt. Barely have the leg strength to stand, certainly not in any position to do a running jump backwards into a microscopic sized seat. We attempted it and I fell. Didn't quite go all the way to the ground because there was 3 people in the room and they all muckled onto me. And, very uncomfortable, very embarrassing, hugely embarrassing, shameful. And 3 people basically wrestled my butt more or less back up onto the stand, and then we put me back in the wheelchair. At that point, they decided we really didn't need to do a barium swallow. They all conferred and felt that it was kind of unnecessary, and basically were like, and we're not doing it anyway because we can't get them safely onto the machine. So that went out the window. So that was fall number 2 for my week. Then I began doing a little better getting food in, and we began some physical therapy. It was very interesting, and I don't mean to speak poorly of someone who's there to help, but there were 2 people. A woman about my age, and then a young girl fairly new out of college. 2 totally different mentalities as far as going into getting someone up and moving and things like that. The one my age, unfortunately, had the mindset of the only thing that's going to have you get up and walk is to just get up and walk. And I'm like, wouldn't I, be doing leg exercise to strengthen and things like that? No, you just need to get up and walk. And I'm like, well, I can barely make it up on this lift thing to go to the bathroom, much less go for a stroll. So, we didn't see eye to eye very well. The other girl was wonderful. She was very, paid a ton of attention, listened very well, which the deeper into this mess I get, the more I realize how valuable that is. So round and round we went. Began doing some PT. Most of it as simple as just standing up on the lift. Things like, the younger girl running circles around me as I'm standing there going, high five me here, high five me there, just to get upper body movement and weight shifting and reaching and things like that, which was all good. It all worked good. She was great to work with on it. Then came the day that the other lady, the just get up and walk lady, decided we were going to go down to the gym and do the parallel bars, which are basically just like the parallel bars the gymnasts do in the Olympics, only lower. So we got down there and they put me up on the lift, on the wheelchair. and got me up to the parallel bars, and it's, 1, 2, 3, and you're going to go. And I'm like, where do I put my arms? What do I push off from? Give me some details here. Don't just tell me to walk. And round and round we went, and finally I said, all right, let's do this. I'm not a quitter. I'm going to try it. And I got 3/4 of the way up, at which point, had they just grabbed the gate belt and yanked, I'd have been up. But they didn't, and I went forward and fell all the way to the ground. Um, Folded my heels all the way up till they were all but in my butt. Obviously, on a guy my size, that meant my knees got the living hell tweaked out of them. Quite painful. Um, Finally got sat on my butt, my legs out from under me, and all that. Big ordeal. They had to come with a what they call a hover mat, which is like you're the puck in an air hockey game. They basically roll you side to side and get you on this airbag and then hook a reverse vacuum cleaner up to it, and it inflates and hovers like an air hockey puck. Got me onto that, and then got me onto what they call a hover jack, which is a similar thing, but there are like 4 or 5 chambers, and it lifts you. They hover you onto it, and then it lifts you up to bed height, and they hover you onto the bed. Did that, got brought back to my room, the whole thing. In the meantime, well, and I was pretty upset. I was crying. I'll admit it. Everything just wasn't the direction I felt we needed to be going. And I had a very nice talk with the younger lady, and basically explained my point of view that, hey, I am not going to just get up and walk. I can't. I want to. I just literally cannot do it. So I assume she must have said something because the attitude changed at that point in PT. And we had another, at that point, I was only there another like day and a half, but they were very good days. We really did some good progress, and I felt, like a corner had been turned and we were headed in the right direction. Um, at that point, we reached another Thursday, so I'd been there 1 week, and uh, they decided they were going to transfer me to a rehab facility. Because of various things with my insurance and who they will and won't pay and cover, I ended up in Rochester at Rochester Manor. And I'll call it quits for there for part 3, and I'll get you up to date where I am currently in part 4.